Thank you, Elena, for the warm introduction. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Charu Thomas, and I'm the founder and CEO at Ox. Really excited to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about automation and AI, definitely very central to our business at Ox. To give you a little context on myself, I am an entrepreneur based here in Northwest Arkansas, originally from Georgia Tech's #1 ranked Industrial and Systems Engineering program. And we created Ox to essentially build human-centered automation, which is wearable technology that directs frontline operators through the power of artificial intelligence. Over the past couple of years, we've raised a little over $16 million in venture funding, and we're very proud of the impact we've been able to make with real operators on the floor. Really, our mission and our vision is to bring human-centered automation to the supply chain. And the way we're actually doing that is by building the operator experience across any device, whether it's wrist-worn scanners, ring scanners, smartwatches, heads-up displays, tablet-mounted scanners, any device to make frontline operators more effective in their jobs. Today, Ox is powering billions of dollars of revenue for Fortune 500 enterprises across third-party logistics, retail, and grocery distribution. And our goal is to become a fundamental part of supply chain infrastructure over the coming years. I have a couple of slides, but feel free to interject. I want this to really be more of a discussion, and happy to talk a little bit more about the concepts that we kind of work with every single day. For a little bit of context on supply chain, I know there's probably a lot of folks who know about this already, but it's very clear that supply chains are stressed. Volumes have gone up, but so have costs. Last year, retail e-commerce sales reached $5.5 trillion globally, but at the same time, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics approximates that 54% of those operators turn over every 12 months. Last year, we spent about $250 billion on labor, and that number will grow by $30 billion over the next 10 years. It's pretty clear that automation is required, but traditional forms of mechanical automation are expensive, inflexible, and ultimately have greater than 18-month payback periods. I kind of think about it in terms of 3 different buckets, aside from the bucket we created, human-centered automation. There's large-scale automated storage and retrieval systems, think AlphaBot, Symbotic. Then there's automated mobile robots, and then there's software infrastructure systems like WMSs, OMSs, ERPs, et cetera. The ASRS kind of bucket, that is very expensive, takes millions of dollars of investment and many years to deploy. AMRs are more flexible. Those are kind of like HEVA system robotics, if you guys are familiar. But even still, you need 3 to 4 AMRs per individual, and those cost between $30,000 to $80,000 per robot. So you're still investing hundreds of thousands of dollars per operator. And then, of course, software infrastructure systems like WMSs, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to upgrade those systems, which is why there's a lot of infrastructure that's been built in the 80s that's never really been upgraded. So that's kind of why we created human-centered automation. Our goal is to bring software to a traditionally mechanical industry. Human-centered automation is the only form of automation that can be deployed at scale in 12 weeks, offering a payback period 3 times faster than traditional forms of mechanical automation. And it's pretty simple why. It's because it's software instead of mechanical infrastructure that you're deploying throughout your supply chain. In terms of how we actually do that, there's 4 fundamental components of our technology. We have experience, wearables, intelligence, and visibility. Experience, quite simply, is the operator experience. That's actually what Ox stands for. And it's one software experience that lives on any device. Wearables is pretty self-explanatory as well. We support heads-up displays, wrist-worn scanners, ring scanners, smartwatches, traditional mobile devices, tablet-mounted displays, pretty much any device that you can imagine. And those are things that we either license directly to the customer, or we could live on devices that they already have within their environment. Then we have intelligence, which is artificial intelligence. We build our own AI in-house, and I think that's really one of the key capabilities that we deploy and one of the moats that we have as a business. And then, of course, there's visibility. So it's real-time visibility into your operation across any operator and any device. Really, our goal is to become, again, one single infrastructure, human-centered automation across the supply chain that can support any use case, whether it's replenishment, put away, cycle counting, fulfillment, or more, and be that end-to-end system. We've already done this. Actually, one of the things that we did over the past year is we transitioned our system from V1 to V2, which basically took it from the paradigm of orders to the paradigm of workloads. So we could support any generic form of work, which is, obviously I'm a little bit dorky about it. I think it's exciting. And one of the greatest things, in my opinion, that we've been working on most recently has been basically stronger integration capabilities. So we've recently deployed a declarative framework, we call it Connector, which allows us to connect to any back-end system, whether it's an AS400 DB2 with a multi-member database on the back end, an ERP system, or communication tools like Slack. You could have real-time visibility and real-time information about what your operators are doing on the floor. To give you some context about how this is being used in production, this is a specific example of a case study where we were able to deploy our technology across hundreds of operators. They actually completely shut off their legacy technology, so the only way that they can do work is through our technology, the operator experience. And for me personally, the thing that's most exciting about deployments like this is being so operator-centric. Really, our goal is to change, eventually, the economic equation for operators because we're building automation from the ground up and have different incentives than maybe traditional automation providers. So for our customers, we're saving millions of dollars per year per facility, and that's why they scale us across hundreds of operators and all their facilities on their network. So I wanted to keep it short with the slides because I know this is more of a conversation about automation and AI, but hopefully that's a little bit of context about what we're doing at Ox and how we use automation and AI throughout the supply chain today. Do you guys have any questions?
Team in the back, do you have any questions? Nobody? Okay. Oh, we'll let the rest of the room hear you.
Hey, I'm Preston. Nice to meet you guys. I was just curious. I've not heard much about your the company that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of got started and what the inspiration was for you to get going, and like maybe some of the people that inspired you to do that and get to the point you are today, and maybe some of the struggles that you had?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question, Preston. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
My entrepreneurial journey started when I was a student at Georgia Tech. At the time, I didn't know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I actually wanted to be a mathematician growing up. But I stumbled into a role at the supply chain for McDonald's North America, where I was tasked with deploying these large-scale automated storage and retrieval systems. So really big robots, very expensive. And the core takeaway from that experience was those robotic systems are very efficient, but they're also expensive and take a long time to implement. So it kind of prompted me to consider, hey, are there lower infrastructure forms of automation, and how can we use emerging technologies like AI, wearable displays, computer vision to improve the processes within the supply chain. So that was kind of the, start, and ended up working with the creator of Google Glass, who was a professor at Georgia Tech at the time, and he was doing a lot of studies in wearable computing with supply chain technology as well. So ended up leading those studies, publishing that work internationally, winning best paper, and we also won a couple invention competitions while I was in college because I didn't have any capital to really start the business. So we won second place in the world finals of the Microsoft Imagine Cup. We won $100K from Atlanta Startup Battle, so that was kind of the initial investment to start the business. And eventually also found my way to Arkansas because there was a startup accelerator based here, sponsored by Walmart Tyson J.B. Hunt, that was working on supply chain solutions. So I didn't know where Arkansas was on a map at the time, unfortunately, but basically packed all my stuff in my car and moved 11 hours from Atlanta to here in NWA, and I was just blown away by the incredible ecosystem there was around supply chain and automation. So basically planted roots, and that was about 4.5 years ago. So it's been a little while. In terms of some challenges, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, entrepreneurship is fraught with ups and downs, of course, but I think that some of the biggest challenges are probably related to just the emotional element. Like, I think as a founder, you tend to, it's really hard to separate yourself from what you're building. And so when you do face those challenges, it can be hard to overcome those in the moment. But I think taking that broader perspective and realizing, like, hey, this is part of the story and it's part of the vision, I think that's really helpful. So yeah, no problem.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, go for it.
Hey, Charu. Wow, this is kind of loud. Thanks for presenting today. A couple questions. First, how long does it take for Ox to be implemented into like a DC or a fulfillment center? And the second question is, what's the general feedback that you've received from the employees using Ox?
Yeah, so it takes 90 days for us to get into production. And we're trying to actually decrease that time by investing in infrastructure like the declarative framework we call Connector. We really want to get that to be as short as possible. I think it could be 30 days in the future, but that's not where we are right now. In terms of the feedback, I think with wearable technology or any technology in general, there's always a sense of apprehension at first and maybe concern. But that's why we kind of take, again, human-centered automation. In the name, it's very human-centric. And so we want to make sure that we get buy-in from the operators on the floor. So during our deployment process, we work with the managers to make sure that they have everything that they need to train. It's a train the trainers type of model. And then we also make sure that we're on the floor finding advocates for our technology. There's usually a handful of folks who are excited to try new technology. In one of our first deployments, we had a gentleman named Shad, and he was such a big advocate for our technology that he actually made this, it's still in our office today, a picture of himself wearing the technology with the new technology for the customer, and it was really, really cool to kind of see that level of engagement from the operators. So, and I think over time, they actually realized, too, how beneficial it is for them, so we have so many testimonials that go along the lines of, it's made my job so much easier, I can't even imagine working without it. And so that's really where we're going for at the end of the day.
Great presentation. My name is Vicki Garten. I work for Delphix. So question building on the operator experience. Is there a concern on, okay, this device is going to track where I am, and if I go take breaks or I go outside and smoke a cigarette, that, Big Brother is watching? And how have you addressed that concern?
Yeah, that's a great question, Vicki. So again, I think it comes back to that initial apprehension that operators typically have. I think one thing that helps us is, we don't track any PII, so there's no personally identifiable information about the operators. We're also SOC 2 compliant. That's more of a security thing, but I think that also has to do with, what we're able to do with the data that we're collecting. Our goal, of course, is never to, be Big Brother, because that's completely in opposition to our vision for human-centered automation and the operator experience. We want to build tools that empower people and excite them. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, and it's also something that's really important to consider, because if you're building technology that's impacting how people do their day-to-day jobs, you want to make sure that they're bought into that and that they're not being, taken advantage of or unfairly measured or tracked. So another thing that we do is maybe in the go-to-market process, this is something to touch on. So we're very business case driven on the front end. So our typical engagement process starts with what we call a day in the life of, or an efficiency assessment. It's where we come into the current environment and we see the current people, process, and technology. And then we layer in Ox and our human-centered automation so we can understand what the business case is that automation can provide in the environment today. And we present all of that information in easy to understand executive readout to the C-suite of the organization saying, hey, this is what you're going to get from this capability intelligence versus visibility versus experience, et cetera. And I think one of the benefits of that process is, since it's a time study, there's engineered standards that are, built into the process typically that we're also pretty close to. And so breaks, for instance, OSHA compliance, all of that is built into that process as well. So we're very respectful of kind of what is normal and what is typical, and we obviously don't want to take away any of those, compliance or safety-related things that have been built in for a reason. So.
Hi, Charu. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, what are the top 2 or 3 things that Northwest Arkansas could improve upon that would help the development of early stage startups?
It's a great question. Thank you, Cody. I think that obviously Northwest Arkansas has a lot to offer as a region. Very unique set of talent and people, really engaged, kind, supportive environment. I think in terms of opportunity areas, the first one that comes to mind, of course, is capital. There's very little VC within this region. And, except for Cortado, of course, shout out. Cortado, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is the largest venture capital fund in Oklahoma. They just closed a $80 million fund, correct me if I'm wrong, which is really exciting. And they've been one of our investors since the beginning, so really grateful for their support. But I think Cortado is one of the only, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity to build on that momentum and to create bigger funds within this region. I think the second one, and this is actually one that the Tech Summit definitely addresses, is tech talent. So of course, there is a lot of tech talent here in Northwest Arkansas. I think there might be some tech talent that's maybe not as familiar with startups as, within this ecosystem, because there's very few of them. So that might be an opportunity as well to develop the startup ecosystem to make sure that there's visibility for incredible engineers or product leaders or ops folks. In terms of the quantity, though, I don't know if that's necessarily a gap. I do think that I think we approximated this a couple years ago, so this might be dated, but I think we approximated that there'd be about 25,000 people within tech and product within this ecosystem, as compared to like a bigger market like LA or SF. That might be 250 or 300,000, but if you can compare the populations as well, it's actually pretty significant. So I think the concentration's there, but it's maybe about making sure that the visibility between startups and talent is also well established.